What's up, Stoic warriors? Welcome back to Daily Stoic Insights, where ancient wisdom meets modern life. I'm your host, and if you're new here, we dive deep into Stoic philosophy to help you build unshakable inner strength and peace. Before we begin today's powerful lesson, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because every video we create is designed to transform how you handle life's challenges. And here's the deal. If this content helps you, it can help someone else too. So share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Also, check the pinned comment and description for a free Stoic resource that will accelerate your journey to inner mastery. Today, we're exploring one of the most counterintuitive yet powerful concepts in Stoicism: why your silence can become your greatest authority. We'll discover why the ancient Stoics believed that arguing, convincing, and proving yourself are often the weakest positions you can take. Drop a comment right now and tell me, have you ever won an argument but lost your peace? Let's dive in. Picture this scenario. You're in a heated discussion with a colleague, family member, or friend. They say something you completely disagree with. Your blood pressure rises, your heart rate increases, and suddenly you're in full combat mode, ready to prove them wrong at any cost. Sound familiar? We've all been there. But here's what Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, understood that most of us miss. The moment you feel compelled to argue, you've already lost your power. In his Meditations, Marcus wrote, "How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only to what he does himself." Think about it. When was the last time you actually changed someone's mind through argument? When was the last time someone changed your mind because they argued with you more forcefully? The truth is, arguments rarely change minds. They harden positions. They create enemies. They drain your energy and steal your peace. Epictetus, who went from slave to one of history's greatest teachers, had a profound insight. No one can hurt you without your permission. This includes the permission to be dragged into pointless debates that serve no one. But here's where it gets interesting. And this is where Stoic wisdom becomes revolutionary. The Stoics discovered that there's something far more powerful than winning arguments: commanding respect through your presence, not your words. When you refuse to engage in petty disputes, when you remain calm while others lose their composure, when you choose silence over the need to be right, you project an authority that no amount of clever arguments can match. Comment below. What's the most pointless argument you've ever had? Let's learn from each other's experiences. Now let's talk about the exhausting game of trying to convince others. How much of your life have you spent trying to get people to see things your way? How much energy have you burned trying to make others understand your perspective? Here's a hard truth that Stoicism teaches us. You cannot convince anyone of anything they're not ready to understand. Seneca, the advisor to emperors, put it brilliantly. Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. People change when they're ready to change, not when you're ready for them to change. Think about your own life. The biggest transformations you've experienced, did they happen because someone argued with you until you gave in? Or did they happen when you were internally ready, when the timing was right, when you had your own moment of clarity? The Stoics understood something profound about human nature. People are convinced by their own reasons, not yours. When you try to convince someone, you're essentially saying, your current beliefs and experiences are wrong, and mine are right. Even if you're factually correct, you're attacking their identity, their judgment, their autonomy. And humans will defend their autonomy, even when they know they're wrong. But here's the Stoic alternative that changes everything. Lead by example, not by explanation. Marcus Aurelius never wrote his Meditations to convince anyone. He wrote them for himself, to clarify his own thinking. Yet these private notes became one of the most influential philosophical works in history. Why? Because authenticity is more convincing than any argument. When you live your principles instead of preaching them, when you embody wisdom instead of lecturing about it, when you demonstrate peace instead of demanding it from others, you become a living example that speaks louder than any words. I want you to think about the people who have most influenced your life. Were they the ones who argued with you the most? Or were they the ones whose lives demonstrated something you wanted for yourself? Here's your challenge. For the next week, instead of trying to convince anyone of anything, focus solely on living your values. Watch what happens. Share your experience in the comments. I read every single one. This brings us to perhaps the most liberating Stoic insight. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. We live in a culture obsessed with validation. Social media has turned our lives into a constant performance where we feel compelled to prove our worth, our intelligence, our success, our happiness. But the Stoics saw this need for external validation as a form of slavery. Epictetus taught, wealth consists in not having great possessions, but in having few wants. This applies to emotional wealth too. True confidence consists not in having everyone's approval, but in needing no one's approval. When you feel the urge to prove yourself, ask this Stoic question. To whom am I trying to prove this? And why does their opinion control my peace? Here's what happens when you constantly try to prove yourself. First, you give others power over your emotional state. Their approval becomes your drug. Their disapproval becomes your poison. Second, you waste enormous amounts of energy on things outside your control. You can control your actions, your effort, your character, but you cannot control how others perceive these things. Third, you often end up compromising your authentic self to fit others' expectations. You become a performer instead of a person. The Stoics had a different approach. Let your actions speak, and let the results unfold naturally. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire at its peak. He had ultimate power, yet he wrote, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm, and round it the seething waters are laid to rest." He didn't need to prove he was emperor. He simply was. He didn't need to convince people of his authority. His consistent, principled actions demonstrated it. This is the paradox of Stoic authority. The less you need to prove your worth, the more worthy you become. When you stop seeking validation, you start operating from a place of inner strength. When you stop trying to impress others, you start impressing them naturally. When you stop needing to be right, you start being effective. But let me be clear, this isn't about being passive or avoiding all conflict. Sometimes you must take a stand. Sometimes you must speak up for what's right. The difference is in your motivation and approach. A Stoic speaks up because it's the right thing to do, not because they need to win. A Stoic takes action because their principles demand it, not because their ego demands validation. Tell me in the comments, what's one thing you've been trying to prove to others that you could simply embody instead? Now we come to the heart of today's lesson, how silence becomes your authority. In our noisy world, silence has become a superpower. While everyone else is shouting to be heard, the person who speaks thoughtfully and sparingly commands attention. The Stoics understood that silence is not the absence of power, it's the presence of control. When someone tries to provoke you into an argument, your silence says, "I am not controlled by your emotions." When someone expects you to defend yourself against baseless accusations, your silence says, "I don't need your validation to know my worth." When someone tries to drag you into drama, your silence says, "I choose peace over being right." But let's be practical about this. Strategic silence doesn't mean becoming a doormat. It means choosing your battles wisely and responding from strength, not reactivity. Here are the 4 types of Stoic silence that build authority. 1. Reflective silence. Instead of immediately reacting, you pause. You breathe. You consider. This pause demonstrates that you're in control of your responses, not controlled by your impulses. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Sometimes that ending is simply the end of your immediate reaction, making space for a thoughtful response. 2. Dignified silence. When faced with insults, gossip, or attempts to provoke you, you simply don't engage. This isn't weakness, it's strength. It shows that you're not threatened by others' opinions of you. Marcus Aurelius faced constant criticism as emperor. His response? How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does. 3. Confident silence. You don't feel compelled to fill every silence with words. You're comfortable with pauses. You let your presence speak before your words do. This type of silence commands respect because it shows you're secure enough to exist without constant verbal validation. 4. Purposeful silence. You speak only when your words add value. You don't speak to hear yourself talk or to prove your intelligence. You speak to serve, to help, to contribute something meaningful. Epictetus taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Here's what happens when you master strategic silence. People start listening more carefully when you do speak, because they know your words have weight. You avoid saying things you'll regret later, because you've given yourself time to consider. You project calm confidence, because you're not reactive or defensive. You conserve your energy for what truly matters, instead of wasting it on every small conflict. You become someone others seek out for wisdom, because you've demonstrated that you think before you speak. But here's the key. This silence must come from strength, not fear. It's not about avoiding conflict because you're afraid. It's about choosing your responses because you're wise. Practice this week. Before responding to any challenging situation, take 3 deep breaths. Let silence be your first response. Then choose your words carefully. If words are needed at all, share your results in the comments. True authority, the kind that can't be taken away, the kind that doesn't depend on titles or positions or other people's opinions, comes from within. The Stoics called this hegemonikon, the ruling center of your mind. When your authority comes from external sources, your job title, your wealth, other people's approval, it's fragile. It can be lost in an instant. But when your authority comes from your character, your principles, your inner strength, it's unshakable. Here's how to build this inner authority using Stoic principles. First, master your responses. Epictetus taught that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. Every time you choose a thoughtful response over a reactive one, you strengthen your inner authority. When someone cuts you off in traffic and you choose calm over rage, that's authority. When someone criticizes you unfairly and you choose reflection over defensiveness, that's authority. When someone tries to provoke you and you choose silence over engagement, that's authority. Second, align your actions with your values. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." Your authority grows every time you act according to your principles, even when it's difficult, even when no one is watching, even when it costs you something. When you keep your word, even when it's inconvenient, that builds authority. When you treat people with respect, even when they don't deserve it, that builds authority. When you do the right thing, even when the wrong thing would be easier, that builds authority. Third, develop emotional independence. Seneca wrote, "No one can have all he wants, but a man can refrain from wanting what he has not got, and cheerfully make the best of a bird in the hand." Your authority becomes unshakable when your peace doesn't depend on external circumstances. When you can be calm in chaos, content in difficulty, and strong in uncertainty. This doesn't mean you don't feel emotions. It means your emotions don't control your actions. Fourth, practice intellectual humility. The wisest Stoics knew that true authority comes from admitting what you don't know. Socrates, who influenced Stoic thought, said, "I know that I know nothing." When you're secure enough to say, "I don't know," when you're confident enough to change your mind when presented with better information, when you're strong enough to admit mistakes, you project the kind of authority that people respect and trust. Fifth, focus on your circle of control. Epictetus taught us to focus only on what we can control: our thoughts, our actions, our responses, our effort, our character. When you stop wasting energy trying to control other people's opinions, behaviors, or decisions, you become incredibly powerful. All that energy gets redirected toward what you actually can influence. Here's the beautiful paradox. The less you need external authority, the more authority you naturally project. The less you need to prove your power, the more powerful you become. The less you need others' validation, the more they naturally want to give it to you. This week's practice. Identify one area where you've been seeking external validation. Maybe it's in your career, your relationships, or your social media presence. For 1 week, focus solely on doing excellent work in that area without seeking any recognition or approval. Notice how this changes both your experience and others' responses to you. Comment below. What's one way you can start building inner authority this week? Let's get practical. How do you actually apply these Stoic principles in real-world situations? Let me give you specific scenarios and the Stoic responses that build authority through silence and restraint. Scenario 1. The workplace critic. You're in a meeting and a colleague publicly criticizes your project in a way that feels unfair or uninformed. Typical response: immediate defense, counter-criticism, or emotional reaction. Stoic response: pause, breathe, thank them for their feedback. Ask clarifying questions if needed. If their criticism has merit, acknowledge it. If it doesn't, simply move forward without defensiveness. Why this works: you demonstrate that you're secure enough to hear criticism without being threatened. You show that you're more interested in truth than in being right. You model the kind of professional behavior that others respect. Scenario 2. The social media argument. Someone posts something on social media that you strongly disagree with, maybe even something that offends you. Typical response: engage in a lengthy comment debate, trying to change their mind or prove them wrong. Stoic response: scroll past. If you must respond, do so briefly and respectfully, then disengage. Better yet, use it as an opportunity to examine your own beliefs and why their opinion triggered you. Why this works: you avoid the energy drain of pointless online debates. You don't give others power over your emotional state. You demonstrate that your peace is more valuable than being right. Scenario 3. The family dinner debate. At a family gathering, relatives start discussing politics or other controversial topics, and the conversation becomes heated. Typical response: jump in with your own opinions, try to educate them, or get frustrated and leave. Stoic response: listen without feeling compelled to change anyone's mind. Ask thoughtful questions. Share your perspective if asked, but don't try to convince anyone. Focus on maintaining relationships over winning debates. Why this works: you preserve family harmony. You model how to disagree without being disagreeable. You show that you're confident enough in your beliefs that you don't need everyone else to share them. Scenario 4. The unfair accusation. Someone accuses you of something you didn't do, either privately or publicly. Typical response: immediate emotional defense. Detailed explanation of why they're wrong. Counter-accusations. Stoic response: stay calm. State the facts simply and once. Don't over-explain or get defensive. Let your character and past actions speak for you. Why this works: innocent people don't act guilty. Over-explaining often makes you look defensive even when you're right. Your calm response contrasts sharply with their emotional accusation. Scenario 5. The attention-seeking behavior. Someone is clearly trying to provoke you, get a reaction, or draw you into drama. Typical response: take the bait. Engage with their behavior. Try to reason with them. Stoic response: recognize the behavior for what it is. Don't reward it with attention. Respond to the person you know they can be, not the behavior they're currently displaying. Why this works: you don't reinforce negative behavior. You maintain your dignity. You often defuse the situation by not giving them the reaction they're seeking. The key principle: in all these scenarios, you're operating from a place of strength, not weakness. You're choosing your responses based on your values, not your emotions. You're focused on what you can control, your own behavior, rather than what you can't control, other people's actions or opinions. Here's your homework. Choose one of these scenarios that you face regularly. For the next week, practice the Stoic response. Notice how it changes both your experience and the dynamic with others. Share in the comments which scenario resonates most with your current challenges. Here's something beautiful about developing Stoic authority. It doesn't just change you, it changes everyone around you. When you stop being reactive, others often become less reactive too. When you stop engaging in pointless arguments, others start questioning whether those arguments are worth having. When you demonstrate calm in chaos, you give others permission to be calm too. This is the ripple effect of Stoic leadership. Marcus Aurelius understood this. As emperor, he could have ruled through fear, intimidation, or force. Instead, he chose to lead through example. His meditations show us a man constantly working on himself, constantly striving to be better, constantly choosing virtue over convenience. The result? He's remembered as one of the greatest leaders in history, not because of his military victories or political achievements, but because of his character. Here's how your Stoic authority creates positive ripples. In your family, when you stop trying to control or convince family members, you create space for authentic relationships. When you model emotional regulation, you teach others that it's possible. When you choose peace over being right, you make family gatherings more enjoyable for everyone. In your workplace, when you remain calm under pressure, you become someone others can rely on. When you listen more than you speak, people start bringing their problems to you. When you focus on solutions rather than blame, you become a natural leader, regardless of your title. In your community, when you treat everyone with respect, regardless of their status or opinions, you elevate the entire social environment. When you refuse to participate in gossip or negativity, you make space for more positive interactions. In your relationships, when you stop needing your partner or friends to validate your worth, you become more attractive and trustworthy. When you can disagree without being disagreeable, you deepen your connections. When you support others without needing credit, you build lasting bonds. But here's the most important ripple effect. You give others permission to be their best selves. When people see you handling criticism gracefully, they learn that it's possible. When they see you staying calm in conflict, they realize they have that choice too. When they see you living according to your principles, even when it's difficult, they're inspired to examine their own values. You become what the Stoics called a procope, someone making progress toward wisdom. And your progress encourages others to begin their own journey. Think about the people who have influenced you most positively. I bet they weren't the ones who argued with you the most or tried hardest to convince you of their views. They were probably the ones who demonstrated, through their lives, something you wanted for yourself. That's the person you can become for others. Seneca wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Your decision to embrace Stoic authority might be the beginning that helps someone else end their own cycle of reactivity, defensiveness, or need for external validation. Your challenge: this week, consciously model the behavior you want to see in others. Don't tell people to be calm yourself. Don't lecture about respect. Show respect consistently. Don't demand understanding, demonstrate understanding. Comment below. Who in your life has modeled the kind of authority we're talking about today? What did you learn from them? As we wrap up today's deep dive into Stoic authority, I want you to remember this: your silence, your restraint, your refusal to be drawn into every battle. These aren't signs of weakness. They're signs of mastery. The ancient Stoics understood something that our modern world has forgotten. True power is self-control. True authority is inner strength. True influence is leading by example. When you stop arguing, you start influencing. When you stop trying to convince, you start inspiring. When you stop needing to prove yourself, you start becoming someone worth following. Here's your action plan for this week. Practice the pause. Before responding to any challenging situation, take 3 deep breaths. Choose one relationship where you've been trying to convince or change someone, and focus instead on modeling the behavior you want to see. Identify one area where you've been seeking external validation, and practice finding that validation within yourself. Notice your triggers. What situations make you feel like you need to argue, convince, or prove yourself? Awareness is the first step to change. But here's the most important thing. This journey requires community. You can't do it alone, and you don't have to. If this video helped you, please hit that like button. It helps us reach more people who need this message. Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss our daily doses of Stoic wisdom. Most importantly, check the pinned comment and the description for a free resource that will help you implement these Stoic principles in your daily life. It's a practical guide that complements everything we've discussed today. And please, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Maybe it's someone who's always arguing, someone who's seeking validation, or someone who just needs to find their inner strength. Your share could be the beginning of their transformation. Finally, I want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me about a time when staying silent gave you more power than speaking up would have. Or share which of today's concepts resonated most with you. I read every comment, and your insights help shape future videos. Remember, every day is a new opportunity to practice Stoic wisdom. Every challenge is a chance to build your inner authority. Every moment of silence can be a demonstration of your strength. Until next time, stay strong, stay wise, and keep building that unshakable inner authority. This is Daily Stoic Insights, and I'll see you in the next video.